Hello, everyone. I'm James Garcia. I'm the communications coordinator for United Cerebral Palsy. I'm also the host of their new podcast, Life Without Limits. We're here today during our annual meeting to just take a moment to meet Carlos Gonzalez. Carlos is originally from Monterrey, Mexico. He was born there in 1984 and came to actually live in Edmonton in Canada about 17 years ago when he was 19. He went there to earn a bachelor's of arts degree in social sciences, and a minor in communications from the King's University. And about 10 years ago, a little more than 10 years ago, he went to work for CP-Alberta, which of course is one of our two affiliates in Canada. Carlos, wanted to have him on because Carlos does a very interesting thing in terms of the kinds of disability awareness presentations that he does out in the community, where he weaves in motivational speaking, which is really kind of centered on his life and his own experiences. And that too is also the subject in many ways and the inspiration behind a podcast that Carlos and his co-host Leah Eisen have also developed called My Life Without Limits. And it's being developed for CP-Alberta. So Carlos, I want to welcome you today.
Thank you so much, James, for having me today. I really do appreciate it.
Carlos, first let's just dive into how did you get from Monterrey, Mexico to be living in Edmonton? What sort of brought you to Edmonton?
You know, James, I had a very independent life back at home, but I wanted to have even more independence. I realized that the resources back home were not as as easy for me to have in compared to to here. So I decided to move here to have a better independence, go to school here, have a degree here, and it's been fantastic. I really enjoyed it, and but that was the main reason why I decided to come to Canada.
Now, talk if you can about the work that you do for CP-Alberta. And if you would, explain how you're able to weave in your personal story when you are out there doing your presentations.
Yes, absolutely. First of all, I started as a supervisor in the CP Alberta, and then I moved on to do communication, community education awareness, coordinator. Sorry, and then we were doing what's happening. We decided to do disability awareness presentations because we wanted to make an impact into it. The disability presentations were already established before I jumped in. But we decided to continue that. So I realized that the disability awareness needed a little bit of a motivational into it. So I decided, okay, my story is great, and people can learn so much from this story. So I wanted to jump in and put a little bit of my experience into our presentations, and I think it's been going great. People really have related to it and really have enjoyed the presentations.
And in fact, it sounds like there's a tie-in between the fact that you weave in motivational speaking and your own experiences into why you decided to develop My Life Without Limits with your co-host Lee Eisen.
Yeah, me and Leah have sit down because like I said, we've been doing presentations, or I've been doing presentations for a while. Leah had this at the back of her mind for a while to develop a podcast like 4 or 5 years ago before we actually jump into it. So we decided to get together, kind of brainstorming. We wanted to know, we wanted to see that all the boxes checked together. So we wanted to throw this story platform for more of our individuals who have disabilities and as well as those who don't have a disability, because it's very important to share the story experience to people in our podcast. And Leah and myself realized that, and we decided to come up with this idea together.
And so your first podcast has aired or is already online. That was basically, as I understand, you sort of talking about your own experiences. You have another one coming up where we're going to get to know Leah. And then from that point on, what kind of guests do you want to have on the podcast?
You know, we're gonna have a nurse coming up after that. We're going to see how the nurses have coped with persons with disabilities, and if they have had experience with persons with disabilities. We're gonna talk about mental health, myself and Leah, about our own experiences if we ever had mental health. I personally haven't had too much of a mental health, but we all had to work on our own mental health, right? So we want to explain that up. We want to have other individuals who have had successful stories in their end. We're having another executive director also in the future as well from a different organization. We might have our own executive director, our own employer, our own social worker we will be having as well. So it's going to be really, really exciting for people to hear their own personal experience and their own stories for all of our audiences.
And how now, if people want to listen to this podcast, how do they do that? How do they find you?
They can go into their Instagram, My Life Without Limits podcast on our Instagram. We're having a website coming up at you can have a look at my cp-alberta.com/My Life Without Limits, and it will be very excited. Uh, People can come and look at it that way for sure.
And you can be, and as I think you said, you told me before we began this interview that you can find it on the major platforms, podcast platforms.
Absolutely. So yeah, you can find us everywhere on our different platforms: Spotify, Apple Music, Google Music, and all the different Spotify platforms. Sorry, they will be there. You can find the link in our Instagram page right now, and all of the platforms are going to be there.
Okay, so it's My Life Without Limits. The
My Life Without Limits podcast is on
podcast.
Instagram, and then My Life Without Limits is on our website coming up in probably in about 4 days for sure from today.
Okay, fantastic. Congratulations on that. Congratulations on the work you're doing. Those of you out there watching during the annual meeting or out there in the general public who are watching this should know that we're going to do a longer presentation specifically with Carlos. Well, he will give us an example of the kind of community disability awareness presentations that he does and how he weaves in his personal story and this motivational speaking aspect of it. That will be on June the 4th, and it will be presented online via Zoom at 1 p.m. Eastern. We will be promoting that through our social media pages and email and other marketing capabilities. And so we look forward to people tuning in for that so they can get to know Carlos a little bit more. Thank you, Carlos, for being on with us today, and good luck in everything that you're doing.
Thank you so much, James, for the invitation, and I'm looking forward to see you all on our presentation coming up in June.
All right. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
All right, great. So we're going to go straight into the second video. I hope you enjoyed that. This one coming up is an interview with Doug Cole and Miguel Ayala from a new independent film called Making Sense. The movie explores the science of neuroplasticity and the realities of disability through 5 characters, each of whom lacks one of the 5 primary senses. And each character is played by an actor, incidentally, who has a disability. The filmmaker blends humor, science fiction, and mystery in a way that he hopes will offer audiences a different perspective about the abilities of people with disabilities. So we're going to go straight to that interview, and then just a note to our panel immediately after, because of our technical difficulties, we're running just a little bit late, but we will go right to you immediately after this video. And if you could play the video for us. Welcome, I'm James Garcia, Communications Coordinator for United Cerebral Palsy's National Office and host of UCP's new podcast, Life Without Limits. In just a few minutes, we'll be switching to a second panel of the day for our annual meeting, but in the meantime, I'd like you to meet the executive producer and one of the actors of a new film called Making Sense. The film tells the story of a neuroscientist who teams up with 5 graduate students to prove his hypotheses that people with disabilities hold the key to unlocking a 6th sense. Making Sense was written and produced by Doug Cole, who is also an advocate for inclusion of people with disabilities, and it was directed by Gregory Bain. The film features 5 actors with disabilities who play characters with disabilities. So let's meet Doug Cole and Miguel Ayala, one of the actors in the film. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
So I'd like to dive in right away, Doug. Where did the idea for the film come from, and why are you the person making it?
Well, about 10 years ago, my best friend was paralyzed in a freak accident. And he told me, look, I used to be the person that would see someone in a wheelchair and avert my eyes. I felt pity for them. And now I'm the person people can't look at. They can't, even treat me as like a human being. And I thought, wow, that's the kernel of a story. What if we could change perceptions of people with disability as not being damaged, but having some sort of unique superpower that people would really want to get to know? So I wrote the first script then and there when my friend Tom was in the hospital. And 10 years and many machinations later, we finally were able to bring it to video, which is very exciting.
Is this your first film?
It is my first film.
Oh,
I did a short film about 6 or 7 years ago for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. I actually did a Star Wars fan film for a young man that had life-altering illness, and he wanted to be the star of his own film. So I knew I could do it. It's just a feature is a much more difficult task.
Yeah.
Just given all the complexity.
Yeah, I can imagine, but congratulations, that's fantastic. Miguel, you are one of the 5 actors with a disability in the film. Now, just tell me briefly about your character in this movie.
Yeah, so I play Max Romero. He's one of the supporting characters. He's best friends with the main character, Jules, and she kind of drags us into her adventure, and we, just join all in. My character has agusia, which is the lack of taste, and through that, we'll see in the movie how that kind of plays a role, like Doug was saying, and how you mentioned in the intro, how that plays a role in kind of unlocking the 6th sense. So.
And you, so in addition to playing this character with the disability that you portray, you also personally have a disability yourself, and that is.
I do. I have cerebral palsy. Spastic diplegia.
Okay, and how did you get into this movie? This is your first acting role, as I understand.
It is, yeah. So it kind of happened out of nowhere, honestly. A friend just happened to send me a link to an acting workshop that Doug and Katrine McGregor, who's the casting director, they were putting it on while casting the movie. And I happened to feel very outgoing that particular weekend. I had never done anything of the sort, but just wanted to see. And my friend, so I had been doing some videos for like advocacy for people with disabilities. So she's like, this might be a good chance for you to interact with other people with disabilities in town. So, I just kind of went for it, and then it just kind of snowballed. And then I auditioned for the movie afterwards, and I went through the process. But yeah.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. And Doug, tell me, now that this is done and you've already screened it, I think, at a couple of film festivals, talk a little bit about that, but especially what is it you're hoping to achieve, because it's more than just a dramatic film, right?
Yeah, Miguel said it best. We did have a casting workshop, and that's part of what I was trying to achieve. I'm vice president of a charity called Includability, where we include people with disabilities in sports and arts events. And so we wanted to give people with disabilities job training skills, if you will, how to audition to get a part in a film or television series, and then an acting resume and headshot and all of that stuff. So Miguel came, and he was immediately, infectious with his smile and his personality. And we kind of knew we wanted him, but we kind of played hard to get and made him audition maybe a couple times. Sorry, Miguel. But
and so the film, so your part of your objective is to teach as well as create drama for the screen.
Yeah, we wanted to pay it forward. And for the film, meaning we wanted to provide opportunities for people to further their careers. And then we just said, okay, when you make it, Miguel, you have to give this opportunity to somebody else someday, mentor, which he's doing now with his own podcast, Down with Disabilities, which is an excellent podcast. But that was the primary goal. And the other goal was just to be entertaining. We wanted a film that people would watch. It's a sci-fi drama.
frozen. Let's see if it lets us.
And I think lastly, it was just really important for us to change perception. We wanted people to leave a theater or watch this online and come away and encounter somebody with a disability, and instead of avoiding them, actually having a conversation to say, hey, is any other sense heightened? Do you feel any different? But more than anything, just treat them as human beings, because they're no different than any of us. And by the way, we're all disabled, whether we wear that on our sleeves or not.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that, of course, is what UCP is all about, and the work that you do in your organization. And so it has a great mission, in addition to being entertaining, as you put it. Tell us before we go, where can people see the film? It's
on most streaming platforms. So you can see it on Amazon, you can see it on iTunes, Google Play, Xbox, YouTube, and hopefully more get added every day. It seems that way. And we're excited. We're excited for people to finally see it, and hopefully we'll make a difference. Okay, so the film is streaming now. It's called Making Sense. Executive producer Doug Cole has been with us, as well as Miguel Ayala. Please try to watch the film. I know I'm going to try to watch it. One of those multiple streaming services. And I want to thank you guys so much for being part of this today. To our audience, I also want to mention that United Cerebral Palsy is going to be scheduling in the next several weeks a national panel discussion on people with disabilities and Hollywood, and what's happening in the film industry. And who's getting in, who's not, what barriers still exist, what openings are being created. And that'll be a national panel discussion. And we hope to have Doug back for that as well, to be part of that conversation. So thank you, gentlemen, for being on. And thank you out there in our audience for watching today. I'm James Garcia, and thank you for tuning in.